Okay, so yeah, I'm going to talk about this some more, but I had a couple of things to go through as usual. I guess I've run a little bit low on time, but this was just a quick trope thing today, which is that there are a bazillion tropes for school things. So you can imagine this is just listed. Wow, just a, just a lot. I think they're divided into categories. So there's schools and classes. There's admissions, attendance advancement. You know, these are just so many things that have happened so much that they get to be tropified. I couldn't quite say it, but there's the kind of classic thing where you open in a classroom and it's the bell goes within about a minute. Like that happens a lot. There's a thing. It's like okay, da da da. There are a couple that sort of popped out. This is Chekhov's classroom. So Chekhov's gun, right, is the something that appears in the early on is going to be used later on. That gets played with, but it's still people can't help themselves. So this is something something gets discussed by the teacher or whatever gets used later on, often in ridiculous ways. That trope too of like saying someone says I don't know, they just say some pretty common like metaphors like what's a metaphor, and then someone else has to do an info dump. It's I mean, I know why they're doing it, but it's just it's painful when that happens. Asleep in class, I thought I should show that. That's a good one. Happens all the time. It's a pretty standard one. Uh, my very first class here in 2006, I had a student. It was like full. It was one of these terrible Vody rooms in the sad Vody building, the 60s hell. Anyway, but it's like he would always sit at the front, like right there, and fall asleep within a minute. And I guess this guy just didn't like play video games all night or whatever. He's a nice guy, but he was gone within a minute because it was like 1 o'clock. I mean, I think at some point I started to bring just chocolates all the time, but that guy had real problems. Anyway, it kind of helped me, freed me from, if someone falls asleep and they get all droopy, I'm like, okay, I've seen one. Trying people, I'm trying. Okay, so there's that. So just a trope festival. This is something I found out the other day, which was kind of fun, which is which is nice. I mean, complex system data science. The graduate program has been this kind of wonderful organic thing to build, which of course we had no idea we were doing it, 10, 12 years ago, slowly, right? So there's a certificate, then a master's, and then a PhD. And we've just had such interesting people. I think it's really been great to see the change, just the texture of students who come in, what they're interested in, their skills and backgrounds, who applies, which is, part of the idea. And this one is just this little piece here, but we had I was talking to a student the other day, and she told me that she hired another student from they did this class together last year, and this one person is someone who actually has a full-time job running a data science group. So that was a good, because we're worried about, your futures, right? Of course, right? It's not just, well, I mean, some of the provosts or whatever, it's just like, you guys are the monies, which the monies goes into place. But we care, ideally, right? And we do. We care about where you go in the future, and we want you to succeed. So that's why we're not teaching you what we learned. Well, that's what we shouldn't be doing. Anyway, that was a weird. People have done all sorts of interesting things coming out of this group, but that was a nice weird one. All right, I have a very odd. Let me see if we can make this a bit bigger. I don't know if you want to do this, but I have a very strange thing. Okay, so it's so faces of cars, right? So they have faces. I mean, there's cars, the Pixar thing, which it puts the eyeballs in in the windscreen, which is like a thing, right? That's obviously it's the lights. Clearly.
But someone did an edit of that where they put the eyes in the lights, like in the same style.
To try and make it.
Looks horrible. It's scary.
I mean, they made it right. Obviously, it was a big success, except for planes or whatever it got to. But the first one was my kids were little when that came out. I would always tear up at the end. Anyway, we watched it repeatedly. I get affected by shows. So anyway, I've thought of this for a long time. Like, it would be really interesting to create a corpus of. I mean, this is one of these silly ideas that may or may, but I'll show you that it's been explored a bit. Just a corpus of front pictures of cars, right? Going back to, Model Ts or whatever, and then indexed by sales, by how many are out on the. So, that's complicated by advertising and all these sorts of things and what's available, but it's also just what you see if you're driving around, especially at night, like, so I mean, and it's just sort of anecdotal, but you start to see there are more cars that look kind of meaner. They got the grumpy, and there's a little extra line on top of the lights because of LEDs, I suppose, that makes it look like they've got little eyebrows and stuff. Um, anyway, so there's a lot of ridiculousness that you wouldn't think people have done this, but they have. So let me start with this one. Yeah, so this is a Smithsonian article. This is from 2012. This is about, so cars really do have faces, right? So it's about and the word is I don't have it in my head, but pareidolia, right? So sort of thinking about computational pareidolia, this is sort of seeing faces where, and so this is one of these things that's a good mistake to make, right? This is not about stories, but it's about sort of character, and then stories come from that. But it's better to see what you think is a tiger in a rock instead of you see a rock instead of a tiger, right? That error, whichever one it is, type 1 and type 2, that one is a bad error because the rock then eats you. And it's sort of, people talk about that as like imputing agency in things, and that's fair, but it's also, I think, a story thing, because what you impute is like, I see this monster and it's going to come and eat me, and you kind of run through those little simulations, like I have to run up this thing, and like you run little scenarios, so they're kind of little micro stories. I'm sure. Well, it's very common, right, to see monsters in the dark, and I was sure I was going to be murdered by things on top of my cupboard for years as a kid, just staring at it, Anyway, so there are some. This one is kind of interesting. The idea here is that, let's look at some pictures. Show us some more pictures. Oh, there's only one. There's a bunch of links in here. So there's a P&S paper that had auto experts look at the front of cars, right? And it's talking about which part, and then put them in MRI machines while they do this, which is, I think sometimes we have big MRI machines and we kind of want to do, weird things with them. So, but which part gets triggered, and it seems to be that this is a separate part of the brain. Like, it's such a specialized, I mean, it's its own little unit. It's different to the thing that sees triangles and whatever, right? That's a bit, because people can have this part messed up and they can't recognize faces, right? This is, what is it? I can't say the words, but it's, they can't see their own face. Everything's kind of blurry. So that's a face blindness, right? Which is a real thing. But they can see triangles and tables, and that's that's not the problem. It's actually sort of because it's such an important fundamental thing to survival that you kind of want to see this. All right. I think at the end, this one here, yeah. So research people, I don't know. So this is 2008. Tend to prefer cars that are more aggressive, right? Angled headlights with wider intake, power traits, and we're going to get to power. I don't know if that's true. So here's a P&S paper where they did this. They're trying to connect it to expertise. And there's this article, people love angry-faced cars. I don't know if this is true, right? But so that's something, I guess, where you're presented with them. But there's also just there's what's going out on, out in the world. Like which cars did people buy and what are they preferring? And I think I had another one. Oh, maybe it's not there yet. I don't think this holds up as well as they say, but this is the most sinister car faces. Maybe. I don't know.
That one looks sad.
See, I think this didn't hold up for me when I looked through this.
It looks like he's going, oh no.
This is more of the Meta kind of genre, right? You put a number plate on here and you got your buck teeth, and that's going to take it down a notch. It's really weird what they can look like, right? They can look like kind of weird insect things or goofballs or, flummoxed. I don't know, but that's totally smiling. This is a terrible article. It's like you had one job to like look at pictures of cars and find angry ones. And it's like a huge smile on its face. And like it's kind of got warm eyes. I know they're sort of angled a bit though, but they're kind of like, warm. Yep. It's like Pratchett when he wants food.
It looks like it's like quiet.
Just chilling. That could be a content. Yeah, this is not right. Um, yeah, this business, right? I mean, people know what they're doing with it, and then
No, it's so sinister. Oh yeah.
so this is starting to get some of the what is it? I need all these words. The trypophobia, or is it trip?
Oh yeah, trypophobia.
Right? Which I will not. Oh no, not share any examples of. But yeah, kind of nasty, a little bit. Wow. Okay, so also cars have just become gray and white and black. Like they've become incredibly boring objects, right? Which is fine, but it's sort of there's that sort of descent. So maybe it's in the faces that. Anyway, I think this could be well done, but I'll sort of keep it under my. Yeah, classic things. There's seeing Jesus in things. There was the face up. So when I was a kid, there was a first Mars. The first, I guess was it the first expedition to Mars? Maybe the Russians have done some.
The face on Mars.
Yeah, Viking or whatever. Yeah, face on Mars. You know, the this was all over the place, right? So the 80s. I don't know when this was, but the 80s was UFO time, and then we got the X-Files out of that. But it was just people saw UFOs everywhere, and then we got better cameras, and that kind of went away. Of course, we have conspiracy theories everywhere. So,
Pretty facey.
I mean, right? Got a little bit of hair going on. Irresistible to humans to suggest this. So this was just gigantic, and I don't know, just. I'm sure people built a religion out. I don't know, but
That fourth photo is what it actually like in higher resolution.
this one.
Yeah. So it's just.
It was a shading. It was artifact. Maybe a beef Wellington, maybe, or a turtle, pile of rocks. So in my thesis work, there was a big deal around Mars, and it's still sort of floating around. Still, yeah, actually, and we might get to it, but the networks that you find on Mars, just sitting there, these dry canyon, like were they evidence of river networks, right? Were they ancient river networks? Could you tell statistically? Are they different to like avalanche kind of structures? Pretty hard actually, but since that time, we found water. I guess we made up more stories than we've probably discovered. Actually, Mars is topographically from a satellite point mapped much better than Earth, I think, because there's no atmosphere, so we just have a really good like height elevation model of Mars. I think better than here. Stuff like clouds is a bit of a problem. Okay, so that face of Mars, yeah, I mean we see them, humaning, the humaning. Okay, so I wanted to give you that. I will control myself from putting these things up. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, how hard do you think it would be to put together a corpus of every car that's been on the road and sales and pictures, and then we, ask people online, put it on Mechanical Turk and say, rate it on a emotional scale. Some of these cars, there were terrible examples, but some. Let's try this. Angry face car. That's terrible.
Oh, the Jeep. Yeah.
There you go. Someone's got a whole thing. 16 minutes. Why modern cars look angry. Smaller windshields, gender of target buyers. They're trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Can't be tough all the time.
I know you're going to, see what's that? That is just, wow, it's googly eyed.
It's just like.
Please be French. It looks French to me. I'm not sure if it is. This one looks angry for sure. But it looks like they painted the eyes on. Right? This looks like you've gone out of the way to put pupils in there. And it's got a mustache. Some of them have mustaches, right? Well, this is, I don't know what this is.
Those the
Yeah, so the mustache is in a weird,
Weird beard.
it's like a psychotic neck beard.
You're gonna be drive a Jeep. Okay, so I feel like this is fitting then. Like
The Jeep, you mean the Jeep,
the Jeep.
classic Jeep?
Yeah. Like this is fitting. Like the Jeep thing. Yeah, the Jeep. Yeah.
It's pretty cheerful, right? No? Or you think it's like a grumpy looking? These are much aggressive looking. I don't know, Jeeps. Anyway, I mean, they have to be thinking about this and making like the eyes look like, right? I mean, anyway.
It's like that. I hope that it's somebody trying to do a face and then waiting until someone says you have to make it look less like a face. Like pushing the. It's like that TikTok where the guy photoshops his boss's eyes bigger until he notices. Like
I've
that.
seen
And
that.
that's the vibe. I hope
Oh God.
The guy that's designing the Jeeps is just like, I'm gonna make this one an actual smiley.
Yeah, he's just waiting until someone's like, this was too far, right?
He's just cracking up. He's like,
But it sells, and then it sells like crazy. You know, then you're like, then you just have to have everyone has goofball cars from that one.
accepted. Elon Musk thinks the future of cars is just like these crazy looking cyber things. No, it's just people's heads.
Well, you know, people buy cars based on how many like cup holders it has. Like you have a 30-second ad, and 20 seconds is about where all the cup holders are. It doesn't matter if it has an engine or not. And then you know, does it have a smiley face on the front? And now we're good. You know, like this is really what people are after.
Next level of customization is like, who do you want your car to look like?
If you could make it frown, like actively push up instead of the horn, like
Like when you honk, it gets all it screams.
rage has some smoke come out of it. I mean, I think I'm sure people are very, very careful about their cars. Though. Like generally speaking, no one paints cars. You know, this is the '60s or whatever. But generally, they keep them very because they want to sell them or whatever. It's not an exciting place for creativity anymore. Okay, so I'll talk about some other weird things. So here's another sort of middle piece, which is insane. Um, so this is something we noticed with Twitter, like 2009, and we had a high school student from the Northeast Kingdom who'd come through the math thing and the governor's stuff, and he messed around with it a little bit as sort of a project, right? He took some courses on here at UVM. Just I think he took like chaos from Chris or numerical from Danforth numerical, and it wasn't a record. It was just a phone recording the sound, right? So there's no video or anything. Would send it to him. He'd do it. Top the class. He's a smart kid. So he went off. This is Tyler Gray. He went off to MIT, and then we went and gave a talk. Chris and I gave a talk at the Media Lab I guess a while ago now. One of these kind of funny tag team talks that we would give, and he turned up and he said he wanted to come back. So he came back and did a PhD with us, and and probably in this class, just for fun, I said, "You remember this thing? You should do this, right?" Because he messed around with it. This was a plot from a long time ago, um, and I mean, in the end, we did something that probably should win an Ig Nobel. I mean, it's definitely a contender. I mean, we didn't, but he just, you know, this kid just, I mean, I call him a kid, young fellow, but Tyler, he just really, you know, once you sort of open the box on something and you go at it, it can be hard to, you know, like hard to stop. So I'll sort of show you what we found with that. But this is sort of the original one. It was just about this repeating of ha ha ha, and you can see these are all correct, right? So in the sense it's ha ha ha. This is frequency distribution, so it's log scale here. This is also a log scale, so it's a parallel, but it's not, you know, it's not a big range, right? And it has to start with a ha, and that's obviously the base thing, but it's more common to have a ha ha, right? So that actually is a little more frequent, and then they start to drop off. And then down here is there's actually these are 100. This is about 140 characters, so you had to really concentrate because you have to go like this. So most languages have a thing like that. So in Spanish it's JA, JA, JA. In Portuguese, so particularly Brazil, you know, which is represented most strongly of in Brazilian people online, it's K K K K K K K K K K. right? So you'll just see, and that's so it's much easier to type. You just hold it down or you just press a lot. So that has a different statistical signature. Okay, so this blew out into a thing of thinking, well, they're not in the dictionary, but they're things. People say these things all the time. I mean, if you say this out loud, it's little, you know. And we actually have these because they appeared naturally on Twitter. People type this enough. We have happiness scores for these. Hmm. Let's see. Uh, is happy right? So that's a valence of 7.64. All right, so I'll do these. I have to type it. My God, what have I done to myself? Yeah. So what happened? Ha ha. Oh, we'll do it here. So ha is like a 6. This is on this 1 to 9 scale. Ha, it's actually happier if you go up. Happier again, but then it starts to go back the other way because you start to worry a little bit. It's still pretty good, but now it's getting a little disturbing. Is there another one? No, it's not in there. Okay, because it wasn't in the top 5,000 words. Those other ones were all in the top 5,000 though for this Twitter. For Twitter, people type this a lot. This is before emojis. You know, this is common enough to make the top 1,000. So 5,000. All right. So this is a weird thing. So you can sort of think, well, there are other words that people stretch. So we talked about them being stretchable words, and people have different terms for this. There's you can find in some dictionaries it's just sort of mentioned as a thing, elongated words, right? But you can't look them up, and there's not something that says this is a root of something. So it was kind of a weird dictionary thing. Anyway, we wrote this paper, and that's the title. This is terribly wrong. But we end up with this two parameter characterization, right? So there's the stretchability of it, like what's that kind of slope like? Like how do people tend to stretch this way? And so some words don't get stretched at all. They're just like, you know, they're just not things that you lean into. Obviously, swear words, you know, people have a great time with that. Uh, and there are misspellings is another thing to play around with. So there's a stretchability, like how. So this is, you know, from soccer, and then there's the balance, like how much they stretch the different different words. Oh my God. So it was a regular expression, kind of a nightmare because you had to sort of find words that were sort of stretched. So you kind of had to collect a few. And then once you've kind of got, and then sort of establish these stretch kernels, right? So you see enough of these things and you would return something that says, I'm seeing a lot of GOAL. And the G is repeated sometimes, the O is repeated, the A, but it might be that G is never repeated, right? So you just have a fixed G, stretchy O, stretchy A, stretchy L, and then you go back in and find everything that matches that pattern. I mean, so we established a little way to do it, right? And then we had spelling trees because there are misspellings. I showed you the perfect ha-ha-has, but there's a lot with glitches. So we'll look at some of those. So here's the stretchable. Oh my God. Oh my God. This is, this is a spelling tree. Oh my God. So there are, you know, 10,000 of these or something. How does this work? Yeah, so you start with H is the root, and then it's A that way and H that way. So there are some that went HHH and then turned into A, so that's sort of plausible, but not many. And then there are a lot of them. You can sort of see this central thing where that's the proper ha 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 all the way down. But you can see there's sort of some spelling. All of these things are like nice ha ha ha's. It means there's a sort of a fracture in the thing. There's two H's or two A's. Or oh my gosh. So lots of these, and then you know they have their own texture. So I was going to find
What do you use to plot that? Where did you make that?
MATLAB.
MATLAb.
Yes. We're so bad.
I never imagined it'd be like,
It's
that's what it's called. The ha ha ha. Yeah.
it's so bad. Uh, oh, I might get this one. I like it. The PDF one is the.
It's such a good paper name.
So just to give you a sense, right? So this is you sort of find this in the wild. You realize your little pattern recognition says, oh, I've got a thing that has 2 letters in it. So you look for that, like I have 2 letters in it. And then it's kind of a mess. And so it could be HA, but the order doesn't matter. You've got a big stretch in here, so anything that's stretched a lot, but there was only one G and one L, so it gets turned into that. This one gets turned into this because it's got a bit of stretching everything. And then you sort of combine them to, like this is awesome. Oh my God, so amazing. See, it starts with this mess. And then there are stretchable things like we found things like follow me, Justin Bieber or whatever, and the follow is like just F-O-L. So I was trying to make it in big letters, sort of, but it's unreadable. Anyway, so people are really trying to get the okay. So that was that was sort of the plan. It's pretty messy. We don't have to worry about these too much. But there's goals distribution. So there's lots of goal itself. That's a pretty common word. And then when you start stretching it, this is not something that gets like these would be just sort of accidental things where you've got 2 O's or 2 L's or something. But people really like to lean into that one. It's a famous commentator call sort of thing. And people love soccer, so they're going to talk about it a lot. Ha is going to have this kind of pattern because there are glitches, right? So there are the sort of the perfect ha ha ha. There's the even ones, and then there's it's kind of you can finish with an H. It's a little weird. And then this sort of madness, right? So this is like goal. How much of as we go to 140 characters, so find all of the goals that are 80 characters long, and then what's the average length of the G's and the average length of these things. And so that actually turned out to be pretty consistent. So it doesn't matter if you're typing half the way through this tweet or all the way through. It's 280 characters now, but it's all before that. It was pretty consistent. The ha was very consistent because people are going like this. Why do we do this? This got some press because people kind of loved it. Anyway, and then we looked at things like these. We did some measures basically, and we won't go into too much. But how balanced is this? So this is a perfectly balanced one. Both of them get the same stretch, and you can do like an entropy measure. This would be sort of a highest entropy thing. Not much stretch here, pretty even here, but that's going to be sort of lower balance than something where it's 4 equally divided between 4. Oh my God. So there's a whole online appendix. We use the Gini coefficient for the stretch. So that's just the skew of it. These are just a bunch of examples, right? So there's amp and makes and from. People stretch everything, as it turns out. And it's sarcasm. It's just emphasis. It's being funny. Like here's the thing about it from a linguistics point of view. This is a pretty interesting thing to get hold of because it's how people talk, right? Like they actually sort of do this. They're trying to mimic talking. It's not in the New York Times. It's maybe in some books, but not really much. But it's kind of very common in a social media, which is So anyway, there's the ha-ha one. Here are a few others. This is 2, so this is meaning that people really go for the O's, or is sort of either you're going this way and there's lots of more of a wah thing. This is FU, right? So there's like FU gets a long thing out here, but maybe a bunch of F's first and then go for the U's. That's that shape. This is moo, lots of moo. Go out here, moos. That is laughter in another language. So, yeah, wow. And then we're just sort of looking at things that might be misspellings and stuff. There's a whole, let's see if this works. I know we've had some trouble. Yeah, that hasn't been migrated across. Okay. That's a problem. So there's a total madness, right? And I mean, yeah. But it was one of those things. It is interesting. There's a lot of pattern structure in it. It's real, and we got carried away. All right, so a 10-year more than 10-year project. Oh my God. All right. Tyler did some other things that were. It looked at the change in past tense on Twitter and Google Books, like how that's changed over time. Pretty sure I mentioned in Pucks, but that's the shifting from irregular to regular verb structures, particularly in conjugation of the past tense. Interesting thing. And a whole thing with Google Books, which we haven't yet finished. Because Google Books is a disaster, which we've talked about. This is sort of early on. This is just to kind of show that tweets became complicated early on. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but the first tweets we got were just numbered, right? Tweet 23, tweet 24, tweet 25, and you could like go through them. It meant that if someone was replying to a tweet, the number would be there, and you'd have to go into the box and find it, right? So, but that was sequential, so it wasn't so bad. That all went away. This is the metadata for that, or this is the JSON for that tweet. So it's pretty early on. It was also it wasn't even JSON. It was what am I talking about? Not XHTML. What is it? XML? XML. Yeah. So they changed that. So we got a different package. So we had to reformat the old ones. This is just sort of a data wrangling thing. This is a horrible mess, and so the image, of course, is not even in there. There's a link to it, but that's somewhere else. So we don't store that too. If we have this, we'd have to download that. But if you retweet something, Twitter changed things eventually so that the tweet that you were retweeting, its blob was inside it. So it became more of a turducken situation. So that was in it, and you would get, when that tweet was retweeted, it would give you the number of retweets at that point. So that was useful. We do have a paper. Josh Minot did this for the presidents. I'll show that maybe later. Obama and Trump, looking at whether a ratio, like the degree to which they are ratioed or not, just which is this balance of. It was a really interesting bit of data. Let's see. I'll find this. 538 had this. 538, poor old 538. Ratio. Trump, I think. It's this one. So this is from a while. It's 2017, and it was sort of this emergence of this. So this triangle is an important structure here. God, it's only October 20. A lot has happened by October 24, 2017. We'll come back to that, but a lot has happened. And I kind of feel if we sat here for a while, you would struggle to probably get all of it and get in what order. Okay, so these ternary plots. This is well done, and this is an inspiration for someone. I'm just talking a little bit about tweets. So this is for Trump. This is way back in time, but this is this balance of likes to replies and retweets, and it has a lot of problems with bots and whatever. But so we've had some examinations of these things. They're compelling things to look at. But what was sort of seemed to be understood is that if you're over here with replies, like if you're, so this is one of these ternary plots, right? So this is they're normalized so that your likes is some number, these are some number, this is some number, and so you're plotting a triple in this triangular space. So likes are being plotted, from 0 to 100 here, right? So if there were no likes at all, we'd be somewhere on this line, and if there are only likes and no replies or retweets, we'd be over here, and similar for the other ones, if that makes sense. So you normalize them so they add up to 100, and they're balanced, right? I mean, you just give them equal weight. One like is equal to, it has the weight of one retweet, has the rate of one reply. So they're kind of over here, which is means in general, at least in this system, pretty like these are the ones that are being spread more relatively, which is kind of an interesting thing. These are ones that people tend not to like. So if you really get into the reply space, that's when you're getting lit up on Twitter. And this is when, to be ratioed is the story. Twitter's changed it, so I think, especially after Josh Minot's paper, kind of messed with it a little bit in a useful way, but changes the power of what he did, because now it tells you, it's a little bit hard to get through, but of the retweets, it tells you how many of them are quote tweets, because quote tweets are more like this. They're more in the, just, douchebag kind of statements. So that changes things, because you sort of, if it was just pure retweets, it'd be like, oh, we're spreading it, this is important. But if actually it turns out the retweets are mostly quote tweets, then they're kind of more in the replies thing. So you can, this is a well done little visualization. You can roll over it. This is a, said a terrible thing. This is about Mika, what's her name? Terribly sorry, I'm trying to remember. Yes, right. Her father was the. Yes. Okay. So this is just a terrible thing to say. And you can see the sort of balance of what he had at the time, which is pretty equally weighted here. You get likes for free. It's a very lightweight thing to do. So you see famous people like BTS or whatever, they're totally here, right? Just doesn't matter what they say. I mean, people still reply like "I love you," blah blah blah, but it just doesn't balance out the sheer. Let's have a look at the BTS tweet. Oh, amazing. 44 million followers, which isn't the most, but it's still pretty good. Let's see. Yeah, 900,000 likes, 200,000 retweets. And if you look at that now, they'll show you, see, the quote tweets just don't even come close, right? People are just like, yay, they're just spreading it. It's just the sheer happiness. Yeah, 1.8 million likes, 2.4 million likes, pretty durable. It's like everyone will like them. Who? Only 2 million. That one totally sucked. Anyway, so so back to this this thing. So this is this is a nice little, you can tweets by popularity, right? So you can kind of dial it away and see which ones are sort of the most important. Like maybe this one. This is about tapping, right? Bad or sick guy, See you in court. This is amazing. And then there you go, November 8th. That one got more retweets, right? So that's yeah. I'm sorry. What's that? Right. I will show you later that Trump and BTS were singularly the most famous things on Twitter for years, and they were competing with each other. So not directly. I don't think Trump knows who BTS, but they kind of were, at least in the Twitter fame thing, and sometimes Trump was definitely in front, and but both of them were basically competing with function words. I mean, it's just so. No, it's really weird. It's really hard to kind of understand this. They're competing with words like there. So we'll go through that. That is that's a lot, and yeah, no one has that. People have peaks, of course, but yeah, it's pretty rough. Often the most talked about time for famous people is probably when something bad happened to them or bad surrounding them. Like, the peak for Ariana Grande, who's huge and has a big fandom. The Arianitas, right? So if you have a fandom, it's got to have a name, and it's the BTS Army. There are various names for Trump, right? I mean, Trump has a fandom, right? It's a fandom. I don't think Pelosi has a fandom. It's just not the same. It's not the same thing. It's a different thing. Anyway, so yeah, you have to have a name. But Ariana Grande's most talked about is when there was that shooting at a concert she gave in Manchester, in England. So it's I think it's where it was. It's a terrible thing. Serena Williams was the most, one of the greatest athletes of all time. The most talked about on Twitter was when she got really upset at the end of a U.S. Open final. She lost to Osaka. So it's sort of, right. Obama is when he won the election. So that's sort of the first election. So it's different. Okay, so these are Obama's tweets. So they're quite different. So they're really different texture to this. And I don't think these roll over. No. So you can see there's a lot more spreading. So there's something going on. And then these are tweets. Yeah, these are tweets. Ones that have at least 10 replies, likes, retweets, right? So they're trying to. There's a threshold there, really different. I mean, so Twitter is more Democrat, but on the other, sort of on the other hand, it seems to be a good place for the right, right? So it's a complicated thing. But you're being ratioed to pieces out here. This is like Rand Paul finds himself out here, and Ted Cruz. People just like kind of light him up. The Democrats have this, more. There's a lot more of this like spreading the message kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying this is good or bad. I mean, because maybe this is you're being talked about, right? I mean, this is definitely getting attention and being talked about, which can get you a long way. So, and then there's individual senators. You can see this is again 2017. So Ted Cruz actually isn't quite as strong. But Lindsey Graham and Bill Cassidy like really pushed across. Rand Paul, not that lit up. At least and this is in the venue of Twitter again. Al Franken, who of course is gone. Harris is now the vice president. And our friend Bernie. So Bernie's got the right, but they're pretty similar, right? They're pretty similar. Elizabeth Warren does differ a bit, and she's got more of these are important messages that people relatively don't. They'll just retweet it rather than liking it, which is a little bit hard because of the mechanism. Because like people do a lot of like and retweet, but this suggests that you're putting out stuff that's not, you don't want to put a little love heart on it. It's not great. Yeah. Anyway, this is a well done thing, and yeah, yeah, that's Bernie, I think. Yeah. This is sort of like putting them in the center of where they are. This must be Toomey, Mitch McConnell. These are their average ratios. So it's a well done thing, which of course they never redid and sort of stays dormant. But we thought this was a pretty interesting thing to play with. Anyway, all of that information is sort of in here, but it's actually hard to get. The reply number was a hard thing to get hold of. So we tend to do things that are distant measuring things, these telenomic, as I like to call them, instruments. But individual tweets can have massive effects, and this was quickly, I guess, relatively quickly, sort of sorted out. But the Associated Press tweeted this, right, and it turned out to be the Syrian Electronic Army or something like that. I think they called themselves. So you got hacked, and but meanwhile, before that was kind of sorted out, there's some period of time, and I'm sorry, I can't remember how long it was, but the stock market's going down, right? So it's sort of like, I don't know, patriotism or something. It's like, it's like, let's be careful. The money's in trouble. The money's in trouble. Like, anyway. So it was I mean, I guess it's what you expect.
2013. I don't even know if Twitter was like real.
That it was that it existed, or it was had impact.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Sure, sure. I mean, it starts in 2006. That's, I think, yeah, but doesn't. It's really 2007 or 8, and it is around the Obama's first election that it starts to. That and Facebook, and they started to have a social media game, and I think probably in the U.S. the person who had the big who really got social media to work for him for a while was oh my God, from here, Vermont, ran for president and screamed. Yeah, Howard Dean. Sorry, yeah. Which apparently he didn't. Like apparently that's a mic thing. Like if everyone who was there didn't hear these screams, but if you peel away the crowd, I don't know if you saw. It's a pretty interesting analysis because it depends on the mic. So it's actually very much a choice to present it that way. Unfortunately, not saying yeah.
Supposedly it's like vastly overplayed how much of an impact the scream actually had on his campaign.
Right. But it's a good story now, and that's it, right? And if you play it, you play it now with your story, it sounds really whatever. But then on top of that, it's apparently like if you listen to the original thing, it's much more messed up and muted. And again, no one there. I mean, if it really was weird, everyone would have been like stopped, right? Yeah. Um, this is an old thing, which we now have Story Wrangler finally kind of working on this. But this is very, I don't know what happened to him. It's kind of died. But this is, you know, just tracking mentions of things was really incredibly thin on the ground and sort of like just the top 50 words or something like that. But it's interesting to see this, to look back on this. Yeah. Always good to see the CIA spiking. Okay. All right. So this is just a little bit about Twitter. I mean, Twitter still exists. Trump, of course, made it into this really giant thing. I mean, you know, it just exploded. Uh, and it's a whole mess of stuff. You know, it's people talking about cats. It's like bots. It's people using it as a joke place. You know, and then disinformation. Blah blah blah. So this is one of the first things we did. This is starting to measure happiness using our instrument for Twitter. This is averaging over all of 2010. So we take every Monday, every Tuesday, Wednesday, and you have to have local time, right? So this is local time wherever we had English tweets. So in principle around the world, but it's dominated by the US. And you see every day has this kind of shape to it, right? This is this sort of there are fewer tweets in the morning. That's not shown here. That's true. And in some ways, this is what's happening is this is biological midnight, right? So this is that's the midpoint. That would be 12:30 a.m. So 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, 4:30. So it's 5:30. So these are people who are getting up in the morning, and if they're tweeting, it's not so bad, right? They're not complaining about the day, but it falls apart as the day goes on, and then people who are up after midnight tend to be a little bit better. Um, and then again, so this is like we need to be rebooted. Basically, this is why sleep matters because things are going to pieces. And you'll see there's a bit of a trend through the week, such that Saturday and Sunday, and Saturday overall is the happiest. At least back then, it was the happiest day of the week on average. And you can see that Sunday's pretty good early there, but then it sort of starts to fall apart because there's Monday is tomorrow. Friday night is pretty good, so these are pretty good places. There is some weird bot behavior, things like birthday, like I don't know, astrology or whatever comes out that messes with things, maybe at the midnight point. Anyway, this is a reasonable range, 5 point. This is it's a reasonable sort of variation through a day. And the Tuesdays was the lowest one, right? So Monday gets the bad rap for being terrible, but Tuesday you're in trouble, right? Because there's a long way to go until the weekend, and Monday you can still maybe talk about some fun things you did, but Tuesday you're just in the sort of God knows. Thank God it's not Tuesday, I suppose is the thing. Okay, so this is a well, if you look at the name of the figure file for this, it's quite revealing. But these are, I think, five words. This is just cherry picked. These are five very rude words that you can't say on television per George Carlin. And so this is just a cherry picking thing, but these are, and it's nothing to do with happiness. It's just a simple frequency, like the breakfast, lunch, and dinner thing. And so they tend to be at their lowest point, sort of balanced here, and then as the day goes on, the swearing just goes up and up and up. And up. Diverse set of curse words. Try to cover a basis there. But yeah, the wheels are coming off basically. So you shouldn't have meetings here. You shouldn't have meetings at all. But like if you, the ones in the late afternoon, like on a Friday, disaster. So this we published this in papers, but this is a nice article. Greg Miller. It was in Science. I know what's happened. That's come off the bottom of the screen, but it's in Science. Yeah, it was actually in Science. So it was a nice piece, just sort of writing about, well, look, scientists are looking at this. Just trying to think about it, and I got that quote in there: "The daily unraveling of the human mind." So, again, my great contributions to science. I was pretty proud of it. So what's going on? This is Tuesdays versus Saturdays. It's one of our word shift things. Slightly improved, of course, from the first one. And you can see all of the pretty we have pretty similar text sizes. And what's going on? This is Tuesday. Why Saturday is happier than Tuesday. So Saturday's here, Tuesday's here. There's really a dominant thing is, there's a lot more happy words and a lot more negative words going down. So it really is kind of, going in the right way, in a way that makes sense. So there's less, sadness is dropping out and happiness is there. That's not always the case at all. There are a few happier words on Tuesday and a few, and there are some negative words that get dropped away. So let's see. So I wonder if I have them on the, yeah. What's that? Yeah, so there's some, let's just see, Tuesday, right? So there's less bored and drunk, which are weekend things, less fight, less hangover and miss and don't. These are just sort of basic negatives. There's a couple of other things. For some reason, Google is less googly. But last is going to be like last week. There's going to be some funny thing in there, perhaps. That's it. Less of that. So they're pushing. They make Saturday worse, right? So Tuesday's actually doing a little bit better because it mentions those less. But then you get all these positive things in here. There's party, fun, just Saturday. People like the word Saturday. Weekend, happy. There's a ha ha ha. Things are going well. Game, movie. I think you see wedding, right? Amazing, awesome, so good. Beach, beautiful. And some of this could be advertising or whatever. Little less swearing. Little less homework. The word bad is down. Can't, which should be a mess with an apostrophe. I'm not sure. This is where we have a bit of a problem with, I think, con and sin, which is from Spanish, right? Just floating around. There are a couple of function words from other languages which can dominate pretty easily. Die, well, German die, but like it comes across as die. So, early on we had things that just had die everywhere, and we're like, it's not right. So that turned out to be a little bit too much German, and just more love, less no, and more ha ha. Basic stuff at the top.
Don't without an apostrophe decreases on Saturdays.
Yeah, so I think
With an apostrophe increases on Tuesdays.
that's definitely a. Why do we have that? That's a bad little glitch. It's a
Or
bit.
is it like regulate people versus like official accounts? Do official accounts tweet more during the week or something?
So that's definitely part of it. But this can also be advertising kind of things as well, right? I mean, this can be garbage. But this is so we're trying to be careful with that. We're not saying this is exactly how people are behaving. It's kind of what's coming out of the whole thing. I'll show you some stuff with geography at some point, and it's going to be a similar issue. All we know is the tweets came out of a particular state. So this is an interesting, nice piece. This builds on. So take a tweet and you have a word, right? And you can say, okay, we have a score for that word. What are the words like around it? Like how well does this sort of hold up? Even though we're not going to score a tweet, we want to just sort of see what's the sort of, are the ambient words around positive words or negative words similar? And so there's actually a pretty good correlation, right? I'm not showing you the image, but so a sentence or a phrase or a tweet or whatever, if you have a happy word, does it, what we'll call ambient happiness, does it correlate? And it's pretty solid. So we're not going to talk about individual sentences, on average thing, but that sort of feels kind of right. It's partly, there are more positive words than negative words, so maybe that's what's going on. That's interesting. That took a while to figure that out. Stemming is fallible. You have to be a little careful with that. That's something that's done a lot. Or stop words and stemming, very natural things in natural language processing, but we've generally not done those and like tried to let the thing speak for itself. Past tense is, generally speaking, past tense of verbs are generally construed as being a little bit more negative than the current one. And I think there are things like this, is happy, like yesterday, today, tomorrow. I know that's not, let me make that a bit better. Ridiculous thing I'm doing. So the scores are, so yesterday is 4.98, today is 6.22, and then tomorrow is 6.18. So there's a little sort of shift in, at least in that kind of very small thing, right? These are, again, these kind of early, this is the early hedometer thing where we've really, I did the blog one, and this is an early effort to kind of do it for Twitter. And this is only for a few years. Of course, it all runs online now. But this is 2008. This is, when we started collecting tweets, 2009, 2010, 2011, right? So this is only a little way into it. But it was already getting at this, like, how do you figure out what happened on a day, right? So we're struggling with some of that. And so some of these events, this is Obama's come in, right? And this is, or coming in. This is the, no, he's not voted in yet. This is the housing collapse thing. So this is a bailout. That's what that little life preserve. I spent a lot of time finding images to indicate things. It's ridiculous. This is a little life preserver. That's Halloween, so it's a pumpkin. That's Thanksgiving. That's a little pie. Corks for so we just started getting it to work. Valentine's Day, which was yesterday, Easter. So again, a lot of these kind of, there's Independence Day. That's Mother's Day. This was swine flu, which was something. It didn't, of course, take off but we were worried about it and talked about it. This is Michael Jackson's death. That's a silver glove. This is when Twitter exploded. This is their little, how old is this? I think they're in there. Oh yeah. Oh no. Come back. Yes, they're full resolution. This is excellent. That's what Twitter would do when it exploded, right? It had pretty cool little 404s, and it had to do it because it happened a lot. It wasn't because it was being attacked so much as just exploding. Patrick Swayze dies on this day. That's what that is. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm having trouble with the thing on the page. So there's events. There are things like the natural disasters. This is a earthquake off of Chile. See all the positive events on top, right? We've talked about them. This is, so that's the finale of Lost. So this is a bit of a weird one, right? Because it's the end of a show, and Lost is a negative word. So it says, people said Lost all the time. So it clearly wasn't working. Good. I try to have all those things destroyed. And this one is Osama bin Laden, Amy Winehouse's death. This is a terrorist attack in Norway. And there's another earthquake and some other pieces in here. So I think that's the earthquake off of Japan, which was, these are disastrous events. This is a type of entropy, or in the entropy family, right? It's p squared instead of p log 1 over p. This is the Simpson index, which is connected to the Gini coefficient. And this is showing you, like, what's the information level. This is really about the first 100 to 200 words, because it decays so quickly. We couldn't really measure entropy. We felt like that wasn't going to work. And this is to show you that this is the word count we had, which is pretty messy. Twitter's like doing things, and we're clearly not really getting 10%. There's definitely a weekly cycle. But at least when we apply our lens to this and say, here are these 10,222 words for which we have scores, and then score it, you don't see this structure coming through. So that's kind of an important thing. Like, it's, because we're getting sufficiently large amount of this thing coming through. So we're getting what the real, very close to what the real rate of V is, or of, any of those things, because you're measuring rates of words. And anything that's really rare, it's not going to matter when you measure something very coarse like this average happiness. Okay. But these things would pop up, and we'd have to see it. And moving from the ANU data set, I think this is important to say, like, we never saw any of these negative events, right? So that lens that we had with 1,000 words to start with, now we're at 10,000 words. They're commonly used words. and we can actually measure these or see the signal of negative events. We just didn't have the right words before. I don't know if death was in it or, these there wasn't enough coverage of negative words, which is weird because it was a bit skewed negative, I think, and negative words, of course, are, very important. So you can see the weekly cycle. It's going like this. The red is Saturdays, and using this terrible color scheme, but I guess it sort of stands out here. And blue and kind of a light blue, sort of a purple on Monday and Tuesday. So you can see it really is kind of strong the whole way through. What happens is in the last 5 years is this cycle starts to blow apart. And I've started various papers about that, but it'd be nice if this comes up. Okay, so this is recent, and you can kind of see, so we'll do, these are Saturdays and maybe Tuesdays, have them on. You can kind of, I don't know if you can see that very well, but a little bit of a mess. And if we kind of go back in time, you can see it's sort of more, like if we're back here, very clear, right? You see that? Pretty, it could be that Christmas is a Tuesday or something, right? So it's just going to pop up, or a bad thing happens on a Saturday. But as you get now we're into 2018, you start to see that weekly cycle just blow apart, really. And we've tried to make, so, we've sort of papers on this, like story turbulence, right? That just, this is kind of what we've, just like the breaking, what you see is generally in a normal years earlier, the summer would kind of fall apart a little bit, right? People are not going to school, not in work, so they're tweeting more irregularly. But that's just been, and of course, these massive collective traumas. We if we go back out to that full scale, you can kind of see. Maybe turn that one off. Yeah. You can see, right, there are all these positive events and these negative events coming along, but it's really only here in 2000 that we see these. It's just this sort of mark of collective trauma, right? So this is the lowest point we'd ever seen the thing drop to. It takes a while it actually does come back up, but usually things would rebound pretty quickly. Even though Michael Jackson dies, people are all sad. They still talk about him. Like if you just look at Jackson, there's a long relaxation for that, and then there's annual remembrances. But the stories kind of wash over. So this course average thing of happiness goes back. But George Floyd's murder then smashes it down again, and it takes a long time to come back up. So last 18 months. I'm actually just going to look at what's just, is it functioning? So this will be, yeah. So there you go. Valentine's Day. It's probably bots and things, but people tweet about it. They tweet, "I hate Valentine's Day," for example. Fine, but sorry.
Was 2020 the unhappiest year?
Yes, I think so. And we can just look at it in a second. So you see this. There's like, I don't know what the hashtag beast is, but there's some stuff. It's war was up, and yeah. All right. Let's see. So if we go back out to full, yeah, there's really been a climb out of it here. When you're here at this point in time, you have no idea right. You wouldn't draw this back to here at all. But when you're sort of here, this is just a mess. But there's been this, and if you look at the Christmas, right? So there was a sort of a lull through here. There are a lot of, a lot of the negative things that were happening here that were big news were extrajudicial killings of black people. That was really a big part of the, so there's not guilty verdict for George Zimmerman was here, Boston Marathon, and then various terrorist attacks. And then this sort of goes down, right? So the Christmas is going down, and then Twitter was not happy about Trump getting this is the day after. So that was the third lowest point at the time. And then it's coming down, and you see this kind of a sort of a marker, and then it's been going back up. So it's actually back up to, look, the demographics have changed over time. It's really complicated. But, if you look at the Dow Jones, they changed the companies that are in it, right? It's not, it's not some perfect measure of things either. So, yeah, we'll see how, I don't know, how Spanish do. We've labeled some of these, but this is the full thing. So COVID, right, really smashes through it. You're going to a fair amount of South America, Venezuela. This is going to be in here, and then yeah, this one I don't know Spanish, so you'd have to bring this up. We have this little translation thing, so you can translate it, which is ridiculous. So it looks like something in Mexico. It's a killing. Yeah. So as the overall signal, you're going to couple it with other things to bring it, like look up the Wikipedia piece, find it automatically. Um, yeah, it hasn't, it's not soaring back up into the skies. Um, yeah, so you said, this is the prototype. This is some ridiculous MATLAB thing. And, you have to think a lot about what calendars and stuff. This is, to give a sense of those days early on. This is the bailout. This is the U.S. financial system. Prince William and Kate Middleton's marriage, right? So everyone's excited. There's wedding and beautiful and all these things, right? 2 days after that, 3 days after, I think, is the killing of Osama bin Laden. People get upset about this one because it's a negative day. It's a big drop. But that's the way these sort of things are going to work, because this is a negative thing being killed, happened to a very negative character from the point of view of the English, predominantly English thing. So there's dead, killed, Saddam is mentioned more. Can't really sort that out, can we? Pakistan is not rated well, so that's been mentioned more. There's basic things like love and happy, they all went away. Mother's Day went away, which was there as well. But there's some of this, celebrating America, it was at sea, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So that's something with a high variance. That's more of a high variance state, which we haven't talked about so much. This is something we're still working towards, making this automated, right? So you can do with tweets, you say, let's find every tweet that mentions a word, and we've got some big versions of that, like mental health ones. We've set for Trump, just anything that has Trump in it. And then you've got this reasonably well-defined collection over time, right? And so this was trying to get at that early on. We had all these words. This is cherry pick, right? So we just made up 100 words that we thought might be fun to kind of look at, and terms. And we asked people for ratings. So some of these we had to kind of get ratings for, which of course some of these are political and blah, blah, blah. But then we looked at wherever, so wherever dark appeared, we looked at so we did, I guess, a number of semantic differentials, right? So there's winter and summer, there's dark and light, there's heaven and hell. We have smiley faces. This is before emojis. And so what we do is we get a score for those words. If we didn't have one, we'd go to Mechanical Turk and ask them, right? So we didn't have scores for emoticons. So we ran another little test and got 50 ratings for these. So we get a score, and then we look at what's the score of the, wherever we find that in a tweet, and put all those together. What's the average happiness score around them? And so this is a kind of an idea of how far off they are, right? So, happy and Christmas, actually, there's a lot of the ambient words are above average around them, right? So they're pretty positive, which is good. Vegan has pretty positive words around it, but it's not a positive word, right? So it's actually kind of a bit of a difference. So this is the average of it's sort of ranked 46 by itself, but if you rank it by the words around it, it's quite different. These are reasonably correlated. Happy is the number one word, and the words around it are also happy, so it kind of works. Stephen Colbert is here. This is in comparison to Glenn Beck and Jon Stewart at the time. We had Sarah Palin. Obama, just sort of putting them together. The emoticons are kind of fun, right? Because they sort of do end up in the right order, the things around them. Like that's a straight up smiley face. It's one with a nose. That's a bit of a cheeky one, so it's a little bit different. Cheeky one with a nose, so it can maybe not pure happiness. And then we get down to the sad ones, and they're around sad things. The words next to them are sad. At the end are Afghanistan and war, bad things, right? So BP because there was an oil spill, so weren't people were upset about them. War is here, I guess. Yeah, lots of political things. This isn't good to see. The Democrat Congress, like just the ambient stuff is bad around them. So kind of an interesting thing to explore. But the idea was like, how well can we use these pieces, use estimates of something around a word to give a sort of a kind of opinion poll, right?
Did it track with the ratings for those words at all?
Yeah, so the ratings are not bad. You can sort of see this is, I don't have it in this plot, but these are the ratings of these words by themselves. So war is the 100th by itself, right? So you can kind of just see here roughly. These are definitely in the bottom, and these ones are more towards the top. The ones that are really off are things like vegan was pretty off. Hour is pretty off. People don't rate that very strongly by itself. Colbert was pretty neutral. Church was somewhat neutral, right? So these are a bit off, but roughly. Yeah. And we did this kind of measure of this lexical size thing. We don't have to worry about it too much, but this was the, yeah, no, just leave it. It's okay. So these are ambient happiness things, right? So we're trying to get these kind of opinion polls out. These are a couple. And I'll finish, but right. So this is words around happy, words around a little smiley face, words around the exclamation point, doing pretty well. This is Tea Party, so that becomes a negative thing. Afghanistan is here, so that's kind of bad. The word sad is here, and that's a sad face. So, in terms of these opinion polls, and what we're able to show in later work is that if you do this for Obama, it correlated with his opinion polls 3 months later. Right, so the real-time thing of Obama, because of course your opinion polls, you have to ask people, blah blah blah, and put it together. It was good. This is to sort of show you that happiness and information content don't really vary too much. All right, we'll get one last thing. But these are again these time series. So this is Tiger Woods. This is Tiger Woods. He's the greatest golfer in the world. He has run into a fire hydrant and is not well, and it turns out that stuff. So that all comes out, and the view of him is lowered, but it kind of goes back up actually. So because people love golf, which is whatever. But BP's just BPing along, and then they have a massive oil spill in the Gulf, and it's a disaster, and everything is on fire. And this is, so disaster is the word around them. Down, shut down, less laughing, accident, crash, injured, scandal. That's all the stuff around Tiger Woods. And then there's one more, which I think this one is Israel. So this is around an attack, a potential war. There's sort of a drop actually in the view of in the words around Israel. It's because it's these bad things potentially happening. Kind of comes out of it. And this is the Pope, and this is yet again another horrific child abuse scandal story. So in fact, the sort of view dropped there, and you can see these bad words coming up. So that's still something that we're trying to automate, to be honest. And I'll finish with that. This is the Obama. You can see it's pretty messy, but kind of weird, to be honest, to get anything out of Twitter that makes any kind of signal. And you could curate it and do it better and so on. But it gives you a way to do something that's, in this case, I don't want to say predictive, but it's forecasting. Okay, I'm going to keep going through all these things. We have geography to come, which is pretty fun. And then we'll sort of go back out and look at the lens properly. this kind of this uncover this skew of positive words, and then we'll see it's really a skew towards safe words, which sounds funny to say. I know it's not right, but words that connote safety versus danger, low danger words. So we'll see that's what it is. And happiness is power plus safety. We shouldn't be looking for happiness. We should be looking for other things. All right. Anyway, ancient Greeks got it wrong. Yeah. Okay, people.